Hi, welcome to another video. So, Nvidia has a really interesting thing on build.nvidia.com/models, and I feel like not enough people are talking about it properly. Basically, Nvidia has a full model catalog where you can try a lot of models through Nvidia NIM APIs. NIM stands for Nvidia Inference Microservices, and the simple way to understand it is that Nvidia takes these models, optimizes them for their GPUs, and then gives you API endpoints that you can use through their platform. And the crazy part is that a lot of these models have free endpoints for development. But in this video, I don't want to just randomly list every single model there because the catalog is already pretty big. As I am recording this, NVIDIA Build shows 139 models in total, including 77 free endpoints. The exact number can change, but the important thing is that this is not just a tiny demo page with one small model. There are actually some very interesting coding and agentic models here. The three that I mainly want to talk about are Minimax M3, Step 3.7 Flash, and Nvidia Nemotron 3 Ultra. These are the three models I would personally test first if I wanted to use Nvidia NIM with OpenCode or any other AI coding tool. So let's start with Minimax M3. Minimax M3 is probably the most interesting new one here for creative coding and multimodal workflows. On Nvidia Build, it is listed as Minimax M3 Preview, and it is a multimodal mixture of experts' vision language model. The key thing here is that it is not just a normal text model. It can process text, images, and video inputs, and then it produces text outputs. NVIDIA describes it as being built for long context reasoning, agentic workflows, creative tasks, long-form video understanding, long horizon coding, and design workflows. That is a pretty interesting combination. Because normally when we talk about coding models, we just think about writing files and fixing bugs. But with Minimax M3, the pitch is wider. You can imagine using it for things like understanding a UI screenshot, reviewing a design, reasoning over a video, describing changes, and then using a coding agent to implement those changes. NVIDIA's model page even says the use cases include long-form video, understanding up to 30 minutes, and long horizon coding tasks of 8+ hours. Now, obviously, I would take the 8-hour thing as a capability direction, not as a promise that your coding agent will magically run perfectly for 8 hours without issues. You still need to test it in your own workflow, but still, for a free endpoint, this is pretty wild. And the model itself is also quite big. The fine-tune page describes it as a 428 billion total parameter model with 22 billion active parameters and a 512,000 token context length. So this is not some small toy model. For OpenCode, I would use Minimax M3 when I want the model to be more creative, more multimodal, or more design-aware. For example, if I am building a front-end and I want it to understand screenshots, explain a UI, suggest layout improvements, or work on a longer feature where it needs to keep a lot of context, Minimax M3 is one of the first models I would try. The only caveat is that the model page says it is ready for non-commercial use, so keep that in mind. For experiments, personal projects, and testing, that's great. But if you are doing production or business usage, check the license and terms properly. Now, the second model is Step 3.7 Flash. This one is different. Minimax M3 is the big multimodal creative and long horizon model. Step 3.7 Flash is more like the fast developer loop model. On NVIDIA Build, Step 3.7 Flash is described as a sparse MOE multimodal reasoning model that is good for enterprise, agentic, and coding tasks. The model card says it is a step-fun vision language model built on Step 3.5 Flash, but with additional vision capability for native multimodal, agentic, and coding-related use cases. The important part is that it focuses on image understanding, fast throughput, and tool use workflows, and that is exactly what I want from a lot of coding agent tasks. Not every coding task needs the biggest model in the world. Sometimes you just want a model that is fast, follows tool calls properly, edits files without making a mess, and is good enough for normal development loops. That is where Step 3.7 Flash can be really useful. If you are using OpenCode, this is the kind of model I would try for quick refactors, docs, simple bug fixes, small features, test generation, and general repo Q&A. It also has the advantage that NVIDIA lists it as ready for commercial and non-commercial use, which is nice to see. So, if Minimax M3 is the creative long horizon model, Step 3.7 Flash is the one I would use when I want speed and responsiveness. And that matters a lot in tools like OpenCode. Because when you are in the terminal and the AI is editing your files, waiting forever between every step is just annoying. A slightly weaker but much faster model can sometimes feel better than a stronger model that takes too long to respond. So I would not ignore Step 3.7 Flash. just because Nemotron Ultra sounds bigger or more impressive. For real coding work, speed matters. Now, the third model is the big one, Nvidia Nemotron 3 Ultra. This is probably the headline model here from Nvidia itself. The full model ID is Nvidia/Nemotron-3-Ultra-55B-A55B, and it is listed as a free endpoint on Nvidia build right now. Nemotron 3 Ultra is a 550 billion parameter model with 55 billion active parameters. Nvidia describes it as an open, efficient hybrid Mamba transformer MOE model with a 1 million token context window. And the use case is exactly what you would expect from a frontier reasoning model: agentic reasoning, coding planning, tool calling, long context analysis, and high accuracy reasoning over code, math, and science. So, this is the one I would use when the task is actually hard. If I want OpenCode to reason through a large codebase, plan a multi-step change, analyze a long document, debug something more complex, or compare different implementation paths, I would test Nemotron Ultra. This is also the model that makes the whole Nvidia NIM thing feel kind of ridiculous in a good way. Because if you told someone a year or two ago that you could open a terminal coding agent, connect a free Nvidia endpoint, and run a 55VB parameter long context model for development, most people would assume there is some catch. And to be fair, there are caveats. I will talk about those in a bit. But still, the fact that this is available through the same Nvidia API key is pretty amazing. Now, these are not the only models on the platform. You also have DeepSeek V4 Flash and Pro, GLM 5.1, Kimi K2.6, Mistral Medium 3.5, Minimax M2.7, Quen models, Gemma models, Cosmos models, safety models, OCR models, retrieval models, speech models, and a lot more. But if I had to make this simple, I would say this: use Minimax M3 when you want multimodal, creative, design-aware, long context coding. Use Step 3.7 Flash when you want a faster coding and agentic model for normal development loops. Use Nemotron 3 Ultra when you want the strongest NVIDIA reasoning model for harder planning and long context tasks. That is the basic mental model. Now, the reason this is useful for AI coding is that the NVIDIA NIM APIs are OpenAI compatible. That means you are not locked into only using NVIDIA's playground. You can use the same API key in coding tools and AI apps that support OpenAI compatible providers. And this is where OpenCode becomes really interesting. OpenCode now has native support for NVIDIA. You don't have to do some weird custom provider setup anymore. You can just OpenCode run the /connect command, search for NVIDIA, select NVIDIA, and paste your API key. After that, you can run the /models command and select one of the NVIDIA models. So the setup is really simple. First, go to build.nvidia.com/models. Then sign in with your NVIDIA account. If you don't have one, create one. It should put you into the NVIDIA developer program flow. Then open one of these models like Minimax M3 Step 3.7 Flash or Nemotron 3 Ultra. From there, click the option to generate an API key. The key usually starts with NVAPI, so just copy that. Now, open your terminal and start OpenCode. Inside OpenCode, run /connect, search for NVIDIA. Paste the API key. Then run /models and select the model you want. That's basically it. You're now using NVIDIA NIM APIs inside OpenCode, and this is why I think this is so good for people who want to use AI coding tools but don't want to keep paying for 10 different API subscriptions. If you're a student, or you're just trying to prototype something, or you want a backup provider when Claude or OpenAI gets expensive, this is actually a really nice option. Now, I do want to be clear about the word free and unlimited here. NVIDIA calls these free serverless APIs for development, and in practice, a lot of people are using them as a very generous free coding API. For normal coding usage, it can feel almost unlimited because you're not watching paid tokens disappear every time you ask the model to edit a file. But I would not treat it like a production unlimited API, where you can send massive batch jobs all day and expect no rate limits. These are free endpoints. They can have rate limits. Some models can be slower when a lot of people are using them. Some models can move from free endpoint to partner endpoint or become deprecated. So, I'm saying this is basically free and extremely generous, but still check the current model page before you build your whole workflow around one model. For normal OpenCode usage though, like asking it to edit files, build a small app, explain code, refactor a component, or generate a script, this can be more than enough. And again, the best part is that OpenCode supports it natively, so you don't need to open the config file and write a custom provider unless you want to do something advanced. But if you are using another tool like Klein, RuCode, KiloCode, Continue, Aider, or any app that supports OpenAI compatible endpoints, you can still use NVIDIA NIM there. You just choose the OpenAI compatible provider, set the base URL to https://integrate.api.nvidia.com/v1, paste your NVIDIA API key, and then enter the model ID exactly as shown. on the Nvidia build page. So for example, the model ID might look like Minimax I/Minimax-M3 stepfun-AI/step-3.7-flash or Nvidia/Nemotron-3-Ultra-55BB-A55B. Again, don't guess it. Copy it from the model page. Now, if you're using OpenCode, the normal path is much easier because you can just use the built-in Nvidia provider. But this OpenAI compatible thing is really useful because it means you can use the same Nvidia key in a lot of different tools. You can use it in your own scripts with the OpenAI SDK as well. You basically change the base URL to Nvidia's endpoint, use the Nvidia API key, and use the Nvidia model ID. That is it. And if you are someone who actually has GPUs or works in an enterprise environment, Nvidia NIM also has the self-hosted side. So you can deploy NIM containers on your own GPU infrastructure and then point OpenCode or any other tool at your local NIM endpoint. That is obviously not the free serverless thing anymore, but it is useful to know because the same ecosystem can go from free testing to self-hosting. Now, for OpenCode specifically, I would use this in a very practical way. I would keep one premium model for important tasks like Claude or GPT, and then keep Nvidia NIM as a free or basically free option for experiments. Then inside Nvidia, I would rotate between these three models. If I want fast normal coding, I would start with step 3.7 Flash. If I want front-end, design, multimodal, or creative coding, I would try Minimax M3. If I want big planning, long context, or more difficult reasoning, I would try Nemotron 3 Ultra. That is the workflow. Ask each model to fix a bug, ask it to explain a repo, ask it to write tests, ask it to create a small feature. Then compare how well it follows OpenCode's tool calls, how often it makes unnecessary changes, and how fast it responds. Because for AI coding, raw benchmark scores are not everything. Sometimes the best model is the one that follows tool instructions properly, doesn't break your files, doesn't overcomplicate things, and gives you usable edits quickly. So yeah, this is really cool. Nvidia is giving developers a very generous way to try high-end models through actual APIs, and OpenCode has made the setup extremely simple by supporting Nvidia directly. Minimax M3, Step 3.7 Flash, and Nemotron 3 Ultra are the three I would start with. Just remember the small caveat. Free endpoint does not mean production-grade infinite usage forever. It means free for development, testing, and experimentation with rate limits and availability that can change. But even with that caveat, this is one of the better free AI coding workflows right now. You can literally go to Nvidia Build, get an API key, connect it in OpenCode, pick Nvidia NIM, select one of these models, and start coding. Overall, it's pretty cool. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you liked this video, consider donating through the Super Thanks option or becoming a member by clicking the Join button. Also, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye.